Okay, welcome to the Bring It Coaching Podcast. This is episode 8, and I'm joined with a special guest, Joe Smith Brown, as he likes to be known as. How you doing, Joe?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you?
Brilliant. I'm really good. And I'm excited about this one because I think this is going to be a good one for those, for our audience and possibly your own as well, just to, hear what you have to say and what you're doing in, your field of sport training, coaching. So I'm looking forward to this one. So before we do get into it, Joe, the way I like to start this podcast with all the guests is, if you don't mind just sharing a fun fact, interesting fact about yourself, can be complete random, whatever you like, when you're ready.
Oh, fun fact.
I know I'll put everybody on the spot on this one.
Oh, in my spare time, I play guitar. So
Nice.
that's what I do outside of the sporting world.
Uh-huh.
So that's a little kind of non-sporting related. Sporting related. A few years ago, when I was getting into competing in powerlifting, held the British record in ABPU for a couple of years. So yeah.
Brilliant. Nice. Good stuff. And hopefully we can talk more about that powerlifting record that you hold. But before that, are you part of a band or anything? How serious are you with the guitar stuff? Are you part of a band? You perform?
Yeah. I'm playing and doing a few bits here and there. So yeah.
Yes, so nice. A man of many talents, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff, man. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. So, Joe, let's go back to, let's talk about how we actually met because,
Yeah.
whereabouts are you based? Let's start, where are you from? Where are you based from?
I'm from Buxton. So that's just in the Peak District. And then I'm currently based in Maxfield, which isn't too far actually from there.
Yeah.
In the north.
Okay, up the north, yeah, brilliant. No, it's
Yeah.
good. I like the Northerners, to be fair. You get a whole mix of different characters and personalities up north, don't you?
Yeah. But you were very up north when I met you.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. Quite a surprise.
yeah. The middle of nowhere.
I know. So me and Joe, we met at a strongman competition that I put myself forward for in the summer. And you weren't actually competing, was you? You were coaching, had some
Yeah.
athletes there.
Yeah, so I had one of my guys was out there, one of my online athletes was out there competing. So yeah, I just went up just to help him out really on the day, just kind of take all the stress of competing off him and just let me just kind of just like handle him throughout the day. Just
Nice,
yeah.
nice.
And it just means I get to go out, meet some people and just see some strongman, see some lifting, which
Yeah,
is all
no,
fun.
absolutely good. It's interesting you say that because I actually had a friend come along with me, and
Yeah.
he was actually supposed to compete himself, but he never did in the end. But if I were to go there alone, I can imagine it being quite intimidating, not knowing, anyone. And so I think it does help having somebody there. Obviously, like you were there for your athlete, so it's interesting. Okay, cool. So talk to me about your in terms of like background. I know you mentioned powerlifting, but where did it all begin for you? Where did it all start? Were you fairly active growing up? What are your sporting backgrounds? If you have
Yeah.
any?
Yeah, so growing up, played rugby from the age of 4. So I just did that through kind of minis, juniors through to colts and seniors, really. So that was kind of like my main sport growing up. And then alongside that, I did loads of other stuff. So a bit of basketball, some boxing. When I was a bit younger, did like racket sports as well. So like your badminton, your tennis cricket as well. So just yeah, pretty active growing up.
Nice.
And then yeah, I think it was kind of like when I got to around 18, 19, when I went to uni,
Mhm.
I just took a break from doing much at all, and that's kind of when I'd kind of been doing a little bit of gym work for the sports when I was kind of 14 through to 18.
Mhm.
But back then it was kind of like you didn't really do a lot of kind of weight stuff. It was mainly just body weight circuits and things like that. I think just because back then it's just very different to now. Now it's kind of like right, it was kind of that era of you don't touch weights unless you're past 60 years old kind of thing.
Right.
And yeah, so uni kind of didn't really do much sport, so got into kind of the gym because I just wanted to just keep myself active and doing things. And then yeah, came out from uni, did my level 3, just because I was spending a lot of time in the gym anyway.
Mhm.
So I thought, oh, this is something I could do for a job, for a career. Got into got that done. Once I kind of did my level 3, it was like, right, there was a guy on my course who'd kind of shown people about like CrossFit. So kind of saw that and it was like, all right, because this is probably going back. This is like in 2012, so probably 10 years ago or so. So
Quite a while
CrossFit
back.
was kind of still quite new, still building, still not that big in the UK. I think at the time it's probably like a box in each major city, but not like it is now.
Sure.
And then so I was like, oh, that's cool. That'll be suffering and fun and a different way of training. So I did a bit of that, and I was just that's what kind of fully introduced me into kind of the barbell world, really. And so off the back of doing that for a bit on my own, I was just like, right, I really enjoy the weightlifting, really enjoy the powerlifting kind of side of CrossFit. Didn't mind the endurance, didn't mind that sort of stuff, but it wasn't something I was kind of like fired up for training every day doing that. So found myself a weightlifting coach, got into Olympic lifting, and then did my British weightlifting level 1 and 2, and started coaching at a weightlifting club, and then just got into kind of that sort of world of weightlifting, strength and conditioning, and powerlifting, and then kind of getting closer to where I am now. Still probably 5 or 6 years ago, I had a quad tendon injury.
Right.
So it kind of off the back of that, really, I couldn't quite get back to doing Olympic lifting like I used to because it was just kind of like a flare up. It didn't really have the time to recover that it needed, and I kind of rushed. I think I rushed it a bit coming back, so it just never fully healed as it kind of should have, really. So it became like an issue with all the ballistic stuff. So that's where I got into powerlifting. So that I could still I was still coaching and weightlifting, but I couldn't compete in the sport or do the sport, really. So I was like, right, I can do powerlifting because it's slower movements and it's just not as impactful on the joints. So and that's where I started competing in powerlifting. Did some bench only comps around 2018 and 19, because I couldn't do any lower body stuff because that was around that sort of time when I was still rehabbing my knee. And that's when I did, so that's when I did British champs, European and world champs for ABPU and AWPC, which is that's all under one federation.
Wow.
And then COVID, and now we're
here. Now we're here. No, it sounds really good. So I just want to go back a bit. So obviously, when you were growing up, you had all these, different sports going on, and being exposed to all these different activities. What made you stick it out? Like, did you have somebody that you was sort of role modeling? Is there someone that you looked up to that kept you in the sport, kept you playing rugby for that amount of time? How did you stay in it?
Just trying to think. I think I'm not too sure really in terms of like kind of like a real kind of like role model. I really liked. I think I just really like sport and just being active, and I was
Yeah.
just kind of and because my dad was like, well, my mum and dad were really like supportive in like me doing sport. So I think that really helped in terms of like just being able to just play loads, like do a lot during the week. And I think when I was really young, kind of thinking back, probably the only reason I really got into it is because, say, like into rugby at such a young age, is because my brother and sister were both playing. My
Ah, I
older
see.
brother and sister, so it's
Yeah.
like, right, they're doing it. So I kind of,
Naturally just went
I just
followed.
want, I see what they're doing, so I just want to do that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Generally how it
um,
works, I think you follow your siblings
that's
doing
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it sounds good. So obviously rugby, it's a tough sport. So would you say obviously leading up until, you know, further down the line when you competed doing the weightlifting and stuff, do you think rugby had a part to play with that? Having that building up that mentality and toughness within you or
Yeah, I think it definitely, yeah, it helped with a few things. Really. I think from like a training perspective, it kind of helped with
mm,
that discipline of with so like when I was kind of like in my teen years, my main sports were rugby and boxing, so both quite disciplined
mm,
sports. So I think that was quite important because when I'd stopped them, didn't really have anything that was going to give me structure or
mm,
give me that kind of thing to work towards. So when I kind of started doing weightlifting or powerlifting, just having that background of right, yeah, you train X amount of days per week, and then you're building towards this date for like a meet or whatever. It just gave me that kind of that 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 routine and that
mm,
discipline from doing those sports. I think at a young age,
mm.
yeah, I think they definitely had that impact on me. Yeah.
No, it sounds good. So would you say like how important would you say having that routine and even for like people in their when they're older and they're adults, I don't think it ever stops. What's how important do you think it is for adults to stick into that routine and even children for that matter?
Do you mean like from like a training kind of
Yeah,
perspective?
just I mean just as like overall life because from my experience and work with different many clients,
Yeah,
you know, your training is part of your lifestyle and it rubs up on other areas of your life.
yeah.
So for me, it's like, you know, how important would you say having that structure at a young age, doing the sports, how did that also transition over to your adulthood life and you know the teen years? And do you think it's
Yeah,
important to keep in some form of routine there?
I think we're well, humans we're creatures of habit, aren't we? You know,
Mm,
like
mm,
so we like I think we like routine. We like that kind of structure to our week or that flow to our week. So I think it's I mean, when you're thinking of like say like you touched on a bit on now, like training, say we look at a week of say Monday to Sunday, or
mm,
might be slightly longer than that if we need to for people's kind of circumstances or routine. But if you look at like a training week, if you know you're training, I don't know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you've got those days set in as kind of like a bit of structure to your week,
mm,
it will make like adherence
mm,
um,
mm.
as
Sorry,
well.
1 second.
That's all right.
You're back on. Sorry, yeah, carry on. Sorry.
um, so that will just like improve adherence, which is I think whenever you're if we kind of like if you're thinking about right, I've got a goal or I'm trying to progress towards something. So say like with powerlifting, you try to progress towards a date, a meet. If you've got that routine or that structure to your week, I think it
Mm,
just helps just keep everything kind of in line and keeps that rhythm, that flow to the week, so you don't kind of lose lose momentum, lose
mm,
motivation, or lose track of that end goal, whatever it is.
mm,
So yeah, I think it is pretty important to have have routine, not so regimented that you're kind of like it's impacting the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But
Did you? Yeah.
and to what degree that is, everyone's different, aren't they? So but
Did you
yeah,
find sorry, did you find like when you were competing, did you find like it did start to have an impact on other areas of your life, or were you able to stay grounded and keep it, keep it to the side and you just focus on that whilst maintaining other areas of your life? How did you find that?
yeah, I think if I was kind of like, if I was like really honest with myself, I'd probably say it was when I compete or when I'm kind of like building up to something like that, it does take over a little bit. Psychologically, you're kind of thinking about it a little bit more. So I think, yeah, it's the way I kind of balance that is kind of just making sure. So, like after a comp or after a meet, is there's a bit of time where training is lower priority. Kind of the type of training I'm doing is lower priority, and just giving yourself that mental break so that you can kind of get that balance throughout the year. Because in strength sports, you're not competing week in, week out like you are in, say, like rugby or football and like more game sports.
Yeah.
So you can kind of go, right, for the next 12, 16-week period, this is what I'm gearing towards or focusing on. And then just after that, just have like a 4 or 8-week period where it's a bit more general, and maybe you drop a day of training or something like that, and you just free up a bit of time and mental energy as well. But yeah, I think it probably and answer to your question, I think it probably did take up a lot of time and mental space, but that was kind of, I guess that's that kind of background of, like you say, that background of sport, that sporting mentality of just like,
talk to me. No, I understand. So talk to me more. So you picked up the CrossFit, you enjoyed the weightlifting, the powerlifting side of things, and the whole barbell complex of everything. How old was you then when you discovered like that? And you said it was 2012, is that right? How old was you then?
Yeah, 2012. So that was probably when I was 20, let's say 21, 22, something like that.
Okay, so still quite young then, still learning. So then you come to this CrossFit gym and you see people lifting, and what was going through your mind and what was you feeling at that time when you seen all this happen?
Yeah, so well, back then, just because Buxton's like quite remote, so there was no CrossFit box in the area or anything. It was all basically the way we were doing it. So it was like me and the guy I used to train with, we were just kind of figuring it out as we go, because information on the internet wasn't quite what it is today. So we were just kind of finding workouts and just doing them in our local gym. So it was like a leisure centre, really.
Oh, really?
Just figuring it out.
Okay.
It was interesting. So it's just like, I guess it's such a different style of training compared to like your generic kind of. Before that, I'd just done like generic splits of, I don't know, chest and shoulders, back and biceps, and all that. So it's such a different way of training, and I think at the time with the education of the sport, the sport was still CrossFit. The sport was still in its infancy, really. So it was, it was just, we were just figuring it out.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that's it. When you got limited resources, and you're left to your own devices, it just shows, isn't it? If you really want to do something, you'll find a way. You'll find a way, won't you?
Yeah, that's it. We were just finding workouts or making up workouts of our own, or like doing stuff that we'd seen on YouTube or whatever at the time. And there was no real, I'd say, probably like compared to now, what we were doing, it was very, very unstructured. Like if you look at CrossFit as a sport now and how most of the top athletes train, or how a lot of people are training in CrossFit boxes. There's a lot more structure to how it's being delivered. Just because I think the sport's grown, the coaches in it have grown, and a lot of them have got more specialist background as well. So there's a bit more knowledge there in terms of what's being delivered, really. But yeah, back then it was right. There's a bit of structure to our strength training because kind of getting into that at the time as well, and then the metabolic conditioning side was go hard and suffer.
And suffer, yeah, for sure. So did you? So just going back to obviously now you're starting to experience the weightlifting side of things. Did you know you were good? Like, did you have a sense of, or was it more just about like you enjoyed it? Did you get a sense of where like you felt like, actually, you know what, I'm pretty good at this. I'm gonna now take it further.
Yeah, I think I just found it was probably a bit of both, really. And I think that's probably it can kind of happen both ways, because you sometimes you find something you enjoy, but then also because you enjoy it, you kind of get good at it as well.
Sure.
Or it can be that you're good at it, so you enjoy doing it. If that kind of makes sense. So yeah, I think it was a bit of both. It's like, right, I enjoy the barbell, I enjoy lifting heavy or just moving with a barbell. So yeah, let's spend more time of my training doing that, and then that's just kind of filtered into, right. Like I said, I found a weightlifting coach, so I was just spending a bit of time to actually dial in the technique of the movements and learn the lifts. So spend a good chunk of time doing that. Yeah, so I think, and then I was like, right, and I think with weightlifting in particular, I like the technical side of it. So as an athlete, you're figuring stuff out, but then as a coach as well, it's that the analysis of the lifts, the kind of breaking down the lifts, learning the movement patterns and technique, because there's so much to it, which is what I really enjoy. That's why I really enjoy coaching it, and don't necessarily miss the sport as in terms of like doing the movements myself, because there's so much you can get out of it as a coach as well. I think it keeps that enjoyment up there, really.
Yeah, no, that which is going to bring me on to my next point. So obviously, a lot of athletes, they compete, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be great coaches and go on to become a coach. So what was it about yourself? Obviously, you just mentioned there you like the analysis part of the technical movements. Was that something you've always just had? Like, let's say going back to rugby days, did you used to analyze how you used to play and certain players how they play? Did you always have that sort of coaching eye for things, or?
Yeah, but I guess when I used to play rugby, it was very much I enjoyed the skill side of things, which I guess has that kind of crossover, because sports like weightlifting, they've got that element of strength and power, obviously, but there is a skill element. So I think that's kind of it must have had a bit of a knock-on effect, because I did enjoy that, all the ball handling stuff and all the agility kind of work, and then the skill of the game as well. Like rugby, team sports are very much kind of you're figuring out as a team, you're figuring out the best way, I guess, through to break the game line. Really, is kind of one of the main things you're kind of trying to do all the time. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, like quick thought. But yeah,
that's good. Yeah. So talk to me about that's really interesting. Talk to me more about the you came out of uni, you did your level 3.
Yeah.
Who did you start to work with, and what was your experience after gaining the level 3, and then what did you do?
Yeah, so I went and got a job in my local leisure centre, which is kind of where I started.
Yeah, nice.
Doing a bit of gym floor work and a bit of PT and some classes. So I think when I started out, as most PTs probably do, you just kind of just you're finding your feet. So you're just kind of working with whoever really, whoever kind of like comes through the door, and just kind of building that kind of experience to what of kind of like clients or different people to work with. Um, so I think yeah, first few years I was just kind of working with just a big mix really. I had a few people that were sport related because obviously that was my background. So I kind of went, right, I want to do PT, but not necessarily all just kind of weight loss or body composition or anything like that. It's I wanted just a bit of a mix across the board. Um, so yeah, I had worked with people for like the army or for the fire service or for rugby or for rowing and runners and things like that. And then worked with some general population clients as well. And then got a few years in and started finding right. It kind of lined up with my training, I guess, a little bit because I started specializing a bit more in terms of my training. So obviously, I was kind of like trying to build my knowledge in that kind of realm of strength and conditioning and weightlifting and powerlifting. So in doing that, I kind of started working with more people in that kind of world. So I guess probably the last few years I worked at the leisure centre, I started that's kind of more my kind of client base I was working with then. And then I guess fast forward to now, that's predominantly who I work with is really mainly strength athletes or people training for sport, as well as I do coach people that are interested in the lifts or interested in that kind of style of training, but don't necessarily compete. Just like getting stronger, getting fitter, getting better at those movements, I guess, like your powerlifting movements or your weightlifting.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I'm just about to say there, do you think the fact that you competed, you lifted, and you had this, knowledge of weightlifting, did it help you towards, gaining those clients, gaining the trust of those clients? How important is it because what I've over the last, I guess, couple of years, is start to, hence why I actually did the strongman competition in the summer,
Yeah.
is to sort of tap into the things that I feel like I'm good at and try to explore them more.
Yeah.
And as a knock-on effect, it's going to help me as a trainer, as a coach, to not necessarily work with those type of athletes, but just building up myself and being more confident on the gym floor and the way I present myself. Do you think that the prime, factor in helping towards your coaching, career and your success?
Yeah, I think like one thing when I started out in the fitness industry, one big thing that I kind of had in the back of my mind is that I always wanted to kind of practice what I preach.
Nice.
So I just want to just kind of make sure that I guess you kind of leading from the front, so to speak. So it doesn't mean that you've got to be like an elite level athlete or you've got to be the best at everything or whatever. But I think just being able to kind of I guess, do those things that say like yourself, you take yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit by just going, right, I'm just gonna do a strongman comp. Like I just want to just do it and just try it. And that's really cool because you just from like a training perspective, you're going to learn so much. You're going to learn so much about your body and how it responds to that style of training. But you're also going to learn from a coach perspective, right, what this style of training can do, like what this training can do for your clients or people who you want to work with. Now you don't have to like say when you're doing strongman, you're not necessarily looking at that and going, right, I want to I'm doing this, I'm really enjoying it. I'm now all of a sudden gonna coach strong men, strong women. No, it's more like right, you've got an understanding of what it's like to do, I don't know, carries or or different kind of odd object movements. And by knowing that and having already applied it to yourself, then I think applying it to your clients or applying it to people you work with, it becomes a bit easier because you've got that understanding already behind the movements or behind what you're trying to achieve with training protocols or anything like that. So I think, I think just having the understanding of what you're delivering, and by doing the sports or by doing the movements or doing the style of training, I think it does help.
Yeah.
If that kind of answers your question.
No. I mean, I understand it. Because the main, I guess, the point following on from that is what you see nowadays, especially with social media, is a lot of people can get themselves in shape, and then all of a sudden they become a personal trainer and they start dishing out advice.
Yeah.
I mean, you've probably seen this. I mean, what's your take on that? And then do you have? I mean, it's sort of like a similar thing where I was going with the whole strongman thing, but I'm able to recognize I'm not an expert in it. I just did it for fun. I have an interest, but I'm not going to start dishing out strongman advice and start claiming I'm a strongman coach. You know what I mean? So, what's your thoughts on the way things have changed over the years and through social media, having a spotlight on certain, allowing people to have a platform to showcase what they can do, but then on the flip side, claim that they're experts? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to see because, like I said, like when I started, there was no social media wasn't really a thing in terms of like the fitness world. I think Instagram probably was brand new then. Facebook was kind of like the only platform that was kind of around. So it's definitely changed over the years. I think it's got positives and negatives, like you say. Like it's got all of a sudden. So say like I was saying before, when I got into CrossFit, there was like on the internet there was hardly anything. YouTube was like really kind of minimal in terms of like knowledge you could kind of draw from that. Like if someone now wanted to get into like a barbell sport like CrossFit or like weightlifting, they go on Instagram and all of a sudden they can find loads of people doing that. In terms of like, I guess, inspiration, there's a lot more of that about. It's hard though because you've got to kind of filter it. I think that's kind of what you were saying. There's like there's people out there who potentially selling a false product or selling a false service. I mean, it's hard. It's always a hard one, really. I think the knowledge that you can gain from things like YouTube or social media platforms like Instagram, I think is great, and it's definitely bringing the next generation into so like I've noticed in my kind of world of Olympic weightlifting and powerlifting and strongman, like the people coming through are a lot younger, just because again that exposure to the sport by seeing it. So I think from that point of view for like athlete development, is great. But you've got to kind of filter through and not just take everything as like gospel. Yeah.
Okay. No, I agree with you on that one. Okay, cool. So let's go more into what would you say you're sort of well known for? Is it more the side of programming, the coaching specifically, working with athletes? Do you do a bit of everything? Like, what would you say you specialize in? I know it's the sport, like the weightlifting and the Olympic lifting, but I'd say what would you say you specialize in, and what do you have the most fun out of that area doing?
I'd say I spent a lot of time developing myself in like program design, so that's probably something that I've kind of put a lot of hours into it. And then I guess I've kind of like over the years really focused on kind of developing my coach's eye, so to speak, like just being a bit more kind of, I guess, trying to develop so that I'm not solely kind of focusing too much on the program. So tend to find that like your program's like that's your sketch, that's like right, that's your roadmap. This is
Right.
where the plan A to plan B. But then having that the coaching side is just as important, I think, if not slightly more important, because gotta you can write the best program in the world on paper, but that doesn't necessarily mean the body's gonna like respond to that. So being able to adapt and knowing your athletes, and you only get that more from like coaching, working with your athletes, and then from like a technical point of view, you can get so much more out of athletes when you're with them, when you're coaching them side by side in a group or one to one. So I think it's just for me personally, I've put quite a bit of time into both. Yeah, I'd probably say I'm trying to be as well rounded as I can and not just kind of pigeonhole into one, really.
Yeah, because I think, like you said, having the best, you could have the best plan, but things happen in people's lives, which can also put a stop to training, or injuries like yourself. You said you got injured.
Yeah.
Right. Was that during competition, or was it during training when you got injured?
It was training.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just like an overuse injury.
Oh, right.
It just kind of just training a bit too much, I think, and just pushing a bit too hard at the time, and still learning how my body was responding. And yeah, I think just that combined with the high impact of weightlifting, my joints. Looking back, I just realized I wasn't that deep into the sport. However, looking at the wear and tear my body's had over my whole life, near enough, it's probably, even in my early 20s, my body is probably a bit more broken down than say like someone who's just turned 20, never trained in their life, and away they go.
Yeah. Well, it's a testament to obviously the work that you have been putting in by participating in sports. So especially rugby, there's going to be some tough injuries ahead, I can imagine. So okay, cool. So let's just turn to the programming side. So I work with people who, looking for fat loss, getting into shape, toning up, trimming down. If somebody was just to start their journey, they haven't started, let's say, take somebody mid-30s, I don't know, trying to give you an example now. Somebody, I'm not talking about myself here, but mid-30s, they work 9 to 5. They come home, they don't do much, sit in front of the TV, starting to notice that the weight's piling on, and they just don't know where to start. What would be your best advice to someone who's looking just to get into the training world and just want to start taking care of themselves a little bit more? What would you say to someone like that?
Okay, yeah. So I think for someone who's brand new, I've been finding a coach or finding a PT, finding someone who's going to guide you through that initial journey, because I think it's so important when you've not really done much in your life, or not like in terms of like movement patterns or anything like that. You just got to learn the techniques of movements, learn how to move and how your body can move. Then if I was kind of like thinking, right, how would I set that up, or how would I kind of work with a client like that, is definitely start off with a bit of a movement assessment, see how they move, what are their limitations, because if they've been, say, sedentary for most of their life, or a big chunk of time, there's going to be limitations, there's going to be potential timenesses here and there. So you've got to kind of figure that out from like a coaching point of view. And then kind of going back to what we spoke about a bit before, I think the start of any program And this is why I guess it's quite important to have like a coach if you're brand new and just starting out is adherence. Really, we're looking at kind of like what can you adhere to? You know, so they're working 9 to 5. You know, they're not necessarily like they might not necessarily be able to train every day of the week. You know, and when you're starting out, that's probably not the best approach anyway. You know, you just want to get them moving a few days a week, 2 to 3 days a week, but just finding that kind of schedule, that routine, as we spoke about before. You know, because you could go, right, if we can train 3 days a week, but if they could realistically only do 2, or if you go, right, here's a great plan, we're going to do lower upper twice a week, so a 4-day plan, so lower upper, but they can only train 3 days a week, so they're only doing lower. You know, they're not getting that balance, and they're not being able to adhere to what you're kind of giving them. So I think having that conversation from a coaching perspective is really important. Find out what they can adhere to at the start when you're building that program for them to get moving and get started. And then you can start working out, right, with these days that you've got in the week or these slots that you've got to train, you know, it doesn't have to be stuck into 7 days. You know, if they can only train 2 or 3 days a week, but you want to do, I don't know, a 4-day plan on a 3-day week, you know, you could do day 1, Monday, day 2, Wednesday, day 3, Friday, day 4, Monday, and you know, just rotate through because they're just getting moving. You know, it doesn't need to be right so regimented. You know, they're gonna progress. It's new stimulus. They've never had this before, so there is going to be that initial uptick, those newbie gains as we call at the start. So we're just thinking about adherence and thinking about what can they actually do. I think that's kind of like a really important kind of starting point, and then you can kind of move on to structure and progression, different protocols, and what you're going to do.
Yeah. Would you say so let's say, you know, a lot of people tend to ask the question is, should they be starting off on weights right away, or should they be doing a lot of cardio to begin with? There's a lot of, I guess, confusion in that world of people just sticking to one thing and not having a real clear understanding of potentially doing both. People think also like, is it safe to do weights if they've never done it before? What's your take on that?
I think so if you're like, right, I just want to get started in the gym, I think a good bit of advice would be you're looking for balance. Yeah. So you're not trying to train like an athlete or for a specific sport. You just want to train, like do a bit. So I think following your kind of main movement patterns. So you squat, you push, you pull, you hinge, bit of single leg work for balance, bit of core work. And then I'd always put in probably some locomotion. So locomotion of that kind of aerobic work. So whether or not that is movement on a bike, rower, skier, whatever, or even a sled, you know, carries, you know, like going into that kind of odd object kind of functional, as they would say, movement patterns. But yeah, just kind of thinking, right, you're trying to target all of those throughout the week. So doing a bit of resistance training with those patterns and doing a bit of conditioning. I mean, if they're brand new starting out, I'd definitely do some form of baseline conditioning, but it doesn't necessarily have to be circuit. It can just be cyclical, you know, just aerobic intervals on a bike or on a rower, or on both, or on the ski, you know, just be still with me.
Have I gone off again?
Sorry, I just said.
And what? All right. I think we're back on.
Cool.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. Yeah, so make sure they do some resistance training in those movement patterns, and then also doing some cardiovascular training, some aerobic work using. I'd start out probably just on a piece of CV or 2 pieces of CV, just aerobic intervals, just to kind of because this is talking about someone who's like brand new to the gym, never really done much before, and then that learning curve, everyone's going to progress at a different rate. You know, you might do cyclical for a month in terms of like your cardiovascular work, and then they're progressing really well. The movement's really good on all the resistance training. Then you can go, right, let's maybe start doing a bit of circuit style training.
Right.
Or it might be that potentially the movement patterns aren't getting picked up as quick, so you just stick on separating the two. So your resistance and your cardiovascular training to start off with, and then you can start blending too. But yeah, that's probably what I'd say is like, yeah, do a bit of resistance training. Whether or not your resistance doesn't have to be dumbbells, barbells. It can be body weight. You know, when I was talking about those patterns, your squat pattern that could be a body weight squat, could be a goblet squat, it could be a back squat, it could be a front squat. You know, it could be, doesn't have to be always barbell or always dumbbell. It could be anything you like, and like hinge patterns. It could be hip thrust, body weight. You know, it could be single leg hip thrust to make that more challenging. You know, like I think when people start out, they see social media or they see all the really fun stuff going on, and they think that that's where they need to start. But potentially, the people who are doing that have been training for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or whatever it is. So their training age is a lot higher. So when you're brand new starting out, you've got to think, right, this is where I'm at now. So, and your learning curve to that could be really quick. You know, if you've got a background in sport when you were younger, or you just pick up movement patterns really well, that could mean within a month you're doing the dumbbells, the barbells, or whatever. Or it might just take a bit longer, and I think that's perfectly fine. You know, everyone's progressing at their own rate, and if you're not necessarily like competing in a sport, you're just doing it generally. You just want to get a bit fitter, a bit healthier. You know, maybe lose a bit of body fat. You know, you can just do it at your own rate, at your own time. There's no rush. You know, it's having a long term goal, and this is something that I kind of work a lot with my athletes, is having that kind of, it's a progress, it's a long term goal. In terms of like, yes, you'll have those short term goals along the way, but we're not worried about where we are today. Right now, we're worried about where we are. Say your goal is 12 weeks or 16 weeks or a year, whatever it is, you know, we're just worried about where you are then. And we're just, and along the way, we want to see that progress, but whatever rate of that progress is, no one can predict the future. No one can predict, right, this is where you'll be exactly on this day. This is where we're trying to get you to. But like you said, people get injured, you know, you might get sick and have to take a couple of weeks out of training. You might just need to back off your training for a week or two just because you're just being a bit more fatigued than usual, and you might need that kind of deload or that kind of recovery week. Or training might have got a bit stale. And all this is like, that's what I was saying with like your programming. Programming is like a roadmap, and yes, we've got these kind of like, this is what we want it to happen in a perfect world, when everyone's recovering, getting the right amount of sleep, eating the right amount of food, the right calories, the right macros. But that needs to be able to adjust as you go, weekly or every couple of weeks with your clients. So that's why I think starting out, it's so important to have that kind of guidance from a coach or from a PT, just helping you along the way, and you'll get to your goals, or you'll learn a lot more a lot quicker than just trying to figure it out. And then even as you get kind of progress through, say if you're an athlete and you're looking to kind of progress further in your world, having a coach is really important, no matter what level you are. I think we can always learn from more people. We can always absorb more information about your sport, or about how to train for your sport from people. So seek those people out. I think is really important.
Nice, good. Which then sort of brings me on to the next phase of somebody who's been through that beginner sort of stage,
Yeah.
obviously you've got to take into account the adjustments along the program. And let's say somebody's now been training for 6 months. Everything's been going really well. There's been no real setbacks, no real injuries, niggles. What I've noticed in my own practice, my own gym, is like people start to enjoy it a bit more. They're eager to come to training. Is there a time where you've worked with clients where they've progressed really well and they want to get into it a bit more? How do things change in terms of their program then? Do they start to do more sessions, or do they have you sat down with somebody and said, look, maybe you suggested they should try a sport or try weightlifting or something? Have you ever had that case happen?
Yeah, I think I guess so.
Sorry, there's about 2-3 questions in one there.
Yeah, that's cool. I think yeah, definitely. When you get in further into training, yes, the program will adapt with that person, and this is why having that kind of knowledge of different training modalities and different principles and ways to apply those principles can be really, really important and really fun to do as a coach, because you might get in 6 months in or whatever, or 4 months or a year or however long you've been working with that person for, and you might want to start trying some different modalities that are specific to their goal. They're going to help them, but then I don't know, like your weightlifting or like your strongman style training, they might do that and be like, oh, this is actually quite fun. I like this style, and I feel like it's still progressing me towards my goal of whatever that goal is. And then I guess it's our jobs as coach to kind of guide them in that direction, be like, right. So weightlifting, what I tend to find is like if people do try it, whether or not they do like a beginner course or even the one-to-ones, if we just try a bit and then they get into it, it's like, well, this is actually like a sport. This is something you can do as a sport. And it doesn't mean that you have to do that year round, because yes, you've got these other goals or whatever, but it's something you could apply yourself or apply your training to give you a bit of focus. Also, like big compound movements, so you're still going to get some great kind of muscular development as well as athleticism. I think strongman movements are really great for that. Just being able to pick up like farmer's handles or yoke or sandbags. These are odd objects, just lift and carry, but you're going to get such good kind of reward from doing those movements in terms of like training effect, depending on how you apply them. And it's just fun, isn't it? It's like not necessarily doing 3 sets of 10 on a bench press or whatever. It's a bit of something a bit different, something that's kind of like engaging as well mentally. You're thinking about the movements. So I think when you kind of potentially have tried that with your clients, or just understanding those training modalities, being able to apply them, and that can filter people into the sport. I've had masters lifters come into weightlifting because they wanted to just try a bit of snatch and clean and jerk. Nice. and then they do a bit, and then it's like, oh cool, well, why don't you come down, lift with the club and see how that goes, and then all of a sudden weightlifting is life. So
hashtag weightlifting.
But I think it's really good to kind of to see that, because you're like, well, this person potentially has come in to just train, to just do whatever you think is best, but all of a sudden they start getting a purpose to their training, or they find, or they used to do sport when they're younger, and all of a sudden they found this sport, they found strongman, they found weightlifting, they found powerlifting, and they're like, oh cool, I'm getting that sport kind of side to my training, but it's not overtaking my life or anything. It's just something I can do a few days a week, bit of fun, group environment or whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's important. Like the people I work with, I've had people in, in their late 30s, 40s, and there's no fun element in their life because all they've been doing is literally work, family, home.
yeah,
That's all the life. That's what their life revolves around. Obviously, it's understandable because they've got a family to raise. But I
yeah,
think as we get older, we adopt these, the lifestyle of not doing, especially those that haven't done much sport or haven't done much training.
yeah,
It's so easy for them to go into that, that whole of like just work, just just looking after the family and just providing and just cooking and food but there's a lot of fun element taken out of it. I mean, do you find that obviously does that grow on the people that you work with? Do you work with a lot of, I guess, elderly people, or not say elderly, but mid 40s, people that haven't maybe done it much for a long time, and then, like you
yeah,
said, like revisit something like strongman or something? Like, do you find that?
yeah. Yeah, I get a few of them. It's like I say, I get some quite a few of my weightlifters or masters lifters. So that's basically from
Nice.
35 upwards, really. So we had someone now competing the other week at the English Masters for Olympic weightlifting. Like I think there's this old, I guess you got the old age-old saying of age is just a number, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
kind of is, like it's more about I think training age
Mm,
or the age of how long you're in the sport, which I guess
mm,
is your training age, but it's how long you're in that sport or how long you've been doing training
yeah,
for, which is probably more important because if you haven't done loads or you've just done a bit, but you've got into it in your 40s or your 50s, your training age is actually still quite low. So
right.
yes, there's potentially like limitations in terms of movement,
Mm,
uh, but it doesn't mean that you can't progress in that sport just because of your age. Really, I think it's just being a bit more mindful. Say from a coaching point of view, is this is someone in their 40s or in their 50s isn't a young late teenager, early 20s kind of athlete. They just need to be approached very differently in terms of
yeah.
how much volume they can kind of have. The recovery is going to be a little bit lower as you get older,
Mm, mm,
which I've even noticed now. When I was in my early 20s, I could train 5-6 days a week, doing two a day sometimes. Now and now I'm just on
yeah.
like 5 days. It's my absolute like that
Yeah,
is my max.
yeah,
Um, but yeah. So it's just being a bit more mindful about recovery, making sure you're staying on top of your sleep, your nutrition, and your mobility. And I think, yeah, it's just because you're in your 40s or in your 50s or in your 60s doesn't mean you can't get into those sports.
yeah. I
Definitely.
think it's definitely a limiting belief for people in that age range. I've experienced myself, like people have come to our gym and said, they'll throw the age number out, but sort of blind to the fact, like you said, I think the training age is more important, isn't it? And obviously the experience that they've gone through with that definitely more important than just the actual age themselves.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's good. Cool. Was there anything else you want to mention around programming? Top of your head, anything else you'd like to cover? Put the
Um,
ball in your court.
no, I think we covered a fair bit there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's good. So what are your plans going forward with yourself? I mean, are you any plans to get back out and compete yourself or
Yeah, all being well, get back out
yeah,
on the platform next year, uh,
brilliant.
do some powerlifting again. Yeah, and I'm just a bit busier with people with athletes that I coach going out competing, especially this last year,
Yeah,
and it's looking like it's going to be a busy one next year. So that's
nice,
kind of like a big focus as well, is just continue to get people out lifting. So yeah.
nice. I look forward to seeing you on the platform and competing.
Oh yeah. I'll
Would you do
I'll get
strongman? Would you do a strongman event yourself, or?
Yeah, I think I would.
Yeah,
I just need a chunk of time where I can train, like change my training towards
yeah,
that kind of modality. But yeah, it's good fun, isn't it? It's like,
it is.
your odd objects, you're moving, you still got that kind of athleticism
Yeah,
that you don't necessarily have in kind of, I'd say powerlifting's a little less dynamic. So
right.
the dynamic element that you get in strongman I really like. So
Okay.
yeah, maybe
Brilliant.
see you at a comp at some point.
Yeah. No, I look forward to it. Just one of the questions that come to mind. Let's say you take somebody who is a complete beginner, but is interested in competing in weightlifting sport, like powerlifting.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you then like what would your approach be? Like, how much time would they need to then how much time would you put them through before competing? Is there a set period of time or?
I wouldn't say there's like a set period of time because I think so. Well, there's a couple of ways to look at it. I think from a competing standpoint, I think it's just good to get out and compete as soon as you feel ready to. No one ever is like you have to hit X amount of number to
Right.
go and compete. Yeah, I mean, like in the powerlifting world, the strongman world, the weightlifting world, everyone's really kind of welcoming community. So I think there's not necessarily like, right, we need to hit this number to get you out on the platform.
Oh, yeah.
It's more, can you meet the standards of the lift? Can you move well enough to perform the lifts really? And everyone's kind of learning curve for that is very different. I think from a training perspective, if you get someone new to the sport, if they're a bit younger, you can spend a bit more time making sure they build those general qualities because I think that's something that can get overlooked is people go a bit too specific too soon or spend too much of the year specifically doing that sport, which I know it's a sport at the end of the day, but having planned periods throughout the year where you're potentially doing off-season training, and just make that training a bit more general, come away from the specific barbell lifts. So having that kind of embedded into the plan, and starting out like that is, I think, quite important. You don't need when you're newer to the sport, you don't need as long to kind of you can do like I don't know, like a 12-week comp prep or 16-week comp prep, but if after that you spend a month doing or 6 weeks doing general training, bit of conditioning, do some different kind of movements, different lifts, you're not all of a sudden going to come back after 6 weeks and have lost all your gains, all your progress. That's still there because you're so new so early on. I think it's kind of like, yes, you'll just have to kind of rebuild that skill, but I think for building that base, so you've got a bigger base. So as your training becomes more and more specific, so I don't know, when you get X amount of years in and you're pretty much year round looking like you're doing powerlifting, by that point at least you've built a base around different movements, so your body's just in better condition. So you're not just in that sagittal plane, just that one plane of motion all year round from day one through to, because that's just a recipe for kind of overuse injuries or niggles and all things that just bother you. So I think, yeah, just looking over that kind of from a sport perspective, like you would any sport, giving your sport kind of a season. Yeah, I think is pretty important. I mean, when you're starting out, you might not necessarily have that season, but just make sure you can kind of do the movements, build up to a point where you feel right and ready to kind of compete. And if you've got a coach, they'll be able to have that conversation with you as well. But there's no set time period or set number. I think you can just do it whenever you feel ready. Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. I just have one more last question. Deload.
Yeah.
Talk to me more about deload, because even myself in the past, I when I was quite earlier on in my, my training, I used to go in week out, smash heavy weights all the time, and wasn't really too much aware of, a deload session or a week. And there are a few clients I've trained over the last, couple of years, where they might come in and try a deload session or a week, but they've just said, but their experience of it is like they just don't understand it, because they feel like they need to be in the gym, because they're in the gym. They feel like they need to be pushed to to their limits. So for those that don't know, do you mind just like sort of explaining that, like just giving your thought process on that?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to kind of think of like a deload is basically a deload is like it's a stop in the road. So you're not necessarily you've done, say, like a classic 3 weeks up, 1 week down. So that's kind of like a typical block of training. You're building for those 3 weeks, and then you do your deload. Now, during that deload, you don't necessarily, because your baseline should be slightly higher than it was at the start of the block, because all being well, you've got stronger throughout that block. Now, all we're trying to do in that deload is let your body recover, let your tissue and your joints recover, and just have a bit of a stop in the road. So you're not going backwards, you're not necessarily progressing forwards, you're just recovering, really. But you want to keep the movement patterns going, so that if you took a full week off, and people have probably done this before, where they've just taken a full week off, come back to the gym, everything's a bit rusty, or everything's a bit kind of, you're just having to rebuild those movement patterns just for that first week. So instead of kind of just taking a full week off, just more recovery. And then it means that when you go back into week one of the next block, your body's good to go, it's primed to go, and you've not gone backwards. So it's just, that's kind of the idea there, is that you're not going beyond what your body can do and risking injury, but you're not going backwards either. You're not kind of going, right, take a week off, or just.
So just to be clear, you're still in the gym, but you might not be doing as much lifting weights. Go on.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways I probably do it. Is probably just reduce the volume and intensity for that week. And then, or the other way you can do it is you can kind of reduce the volume by a bit more, but keep the intensity up a little bit higher than potentially you think. Like you can use a deload week to kind of test a rep max if you wanted to at the end of the week or something like that, because you'll be slightly recovered, and you could build on to like a rep max and then move on to the next block, because that can reset your estimated maxes for the following block. Or you could just go, right, I've pushed to my like a rep max in week 3 of the block. So week 4, I'm just going to do some lighter work, just make sure I keep the skills going. But everything at kind of like an RPE 6-ish. There's plenty in reserve, and just drop the volume a little bit.
Nice.
So there's loads of ways to do it, and there's loads of ways that people will do it. And some people do like an intro week as well. So instead of doing a full deload, they'll just go, right, what's my next block going to look like? And then they'll do like an intro week instead. So it's still a lighter volume and lighter load, but they're just getting used to the movements of the following blocks.
So within.
Sorry, mate. I've lost audio.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, the mics have just crashed on me. Sorry, man. So I was just saying, you said intro, so they'll tend to do during the week, they'll have a slight deload, and then that'll prime them for the following. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, well, I was just saying that's like another way of doing it is I don't really tend to do that much, really. I'm more kind of like block periodization, so I'll deload, I'll just reduce the volume, reduce the intensity, or potentially keep the intensity up a little bit, but still drop the volume, let the body recover. So that's just like a couple of ways that I like to do it. because like I say, with that stop in the road, you don't want to drop the volume and intensity so much that you go backwards.
Right.
And this is like when you're learning what certain athletes respond better to, that's where you can apply like different principles to that kind of week. The one thing I like about keeping the intensity up is that, say, like you were saying, they come and do their deload, but they're like, oh, I feel like I'm not training or anything. But if you keep that intensity up slightly, but just drop the volume, it just means that psychologically it gives them a focus for that week. So I don't know. So you're doing a few weeks of linear progression, and you go, right, at the end of week 4, which is your deload, we're just going to test your free rep max on your squat and bench and blah, 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 or whatever. Or during the week, we're going to test your free rep max or your 5 rep max, whatever you've been building to of those lifts. It means that they can come into the gym and be like, yes, it's a deload, but I've still got one high intensity lift. It's not going to be, yes, it's going to be stressful, but the rest of the week you were kind of recovering. The volumes really dropped on everything else, so it should be enough to kind of recover. And some people can respond okay to that. Some people need that week off, not week fully off, but just that week of just lighter load, lighter volume. And that, I guess that's from a coaching point of view, just being aware of your athletes, being aware of what they respond well to is really important. Like I say, yeah, I quite like the intensity protocol because it just gives you that focus, especially when you've got someone going, just they don't understand it or they don't get it.
Yeah. So it's like a blend. It's like a compliment them feeling like they've actually done some work, but not the amount of.
But not kind of overshot or not put their body at risk. Because I guess it's hard to understand, but from like a strength training point of view, is that after X amount of weeks, when you are due a deload or need a deload, you should feel ready for it. You know, your body should feel ready for it. And I guess that kind of like open-ended way of programming, which some people do, is a good way to kind of go, because you with say like general population, because you don't necessarily need to be stuck in 4-week blocks or 3 weeks or 5 weeks. You could just be like, right, here's a rough guide for my block. This is where I'm going. But you get to week 3 and they're like, oh, I'm good to go. I'm feeling great. So you could go, instead of going, right, we need to deload next week. If they're feeling great, you could add another week, you know, and continue that progression, because you might find in that week 4 that just get that extra level of fitness. And then when you get to 6 or 8 weeks, that's time to kind of go, right, we've done quite a lot of weeks of stress, even if you're feeling good, but by then they probably will feel a bit tired, a bit burnt out. Then it's deload, reduce the stress, reduce the volume and intensity, and then just let them recover for that week. Yeah.
Good. Thanks for the breakdown. Really good.
Hey, no worries.
I learn. You learn something new every day. Honestly, it's good to have a refresher from yourself and get that understanding. So I appreciate that. So Joe, we're going to wrap it up there. Where can people find you?
They can follow my training and coaching on Instagram. I'm not most active on there, but I do a bit, and it is, I'll tell you my handle actually, as you can see. I think it's so it's at Joe_Titan Performance, and then I will be hopefully online on a website in the new year as well.
Nice. I mean, and you mentioned you do some online training coaching as well.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
I might have to invest in myself with yourself. To be fair, get some good prep going for myself. To be fair, because that's something I want to look into doing a bit more. The more strength side of things, I just never have really done it beside the strongman stuff. I'm with you now. Yeah, I appreciate your time, Joe. Thanks for coming on the episode.
No worries.
All the best. Take care, and hopefully catch up with you soon.
Yeah, you too, mate. Take care.
Take care, mate.
Cheers. Bye.